Welcome back to a continuation of an interactive novelization of the most erotic of all art forms, pro wrestling. A saying that I've heard some people mention from time and again, like, I don't know why this just came to mind, but I remember years ago when The Wrestler came out. And it won awards. And at the same time, Black Swan came out, a movie about ballet. And I remember people making the comparison, saying that these were both good movies, one about the highest form of artistic expression and one about the lowest. And I'm saying, why are you insulting ballet like that? I think that's out of line. But this doesn't. I don't think Slammed is going to have anything to do with ballet. Last time disaster happened. We were framed. Cunoesse was framed. And he had drugs in her bag. The drugs were planted, probably. So things are very bad. Once again, we're going to turn on the old random shuffle on the MP3s. But we are going to start off with something. Man, I just looked at the random shuffle and it said we're on track out of 782. Is that how many are in this by now? Okay, we're going to start off with something appropriately melancholy to match the mood of Cunoesse. Ahem. Chapter 8, Future Endeavors. Best and Worst of Wednesday Night Wrestling 671 by Bleacher Watcher 619. Which concludes this rather bland edition of Wednesday Night Wrestling. Honestly, the writers need to make up their mind about whether they want Paul Prototype to be an underdog champion or a dominating one. You can't just have the guy look weak during the run-up to a pay-per-view, then have him absolutely decimate his opponent when the title is on the line, then repeat the process with the next challenger. It's formulaic, which is not always a bad thing, but we've seen this formula applied to Prototype for, 10 years? There was some initial hope that things might be different with the Skull and Scales logo popping up everywhere, but that plot thread seems to have been dangling for forever now. The last major development there was when they had Cameron Dobbs refer to it as the Lawgiver emblem, but that was 2 months ago. Honestly, with the exception of the JJ Havoc Super Horns feud, the show has drifted over the past 6 months. This is a shame considering how hot it was after the Near Fall Academy finale. Speaking of Nafa, I've heard news that we may be seeing at least one of its finalists soon. That Zeus is being moved up the main roster should come as a surprise to no one, as he is being personally groomed by Paul Prototype to be a main eventer. It will be interesting to see how Zeus's very MMA-influenced style will go down with Gua fans. Of course, the one non-fungible-ass competitor that the fans really want to hear about is Shadow Chaos, also known as the former Cunoesse. Well, half a year has passed since Chaos's on-screen betrayal and off-screen termination. Fans are still buzzing about the possibility that the whole thing was a work, even if every insider source I've spoken to swears that this is not a storyline. I'd have to agree with the insiders. Some point to the fact that the Gua dropped a civil suit it had originally filed against Chaos, real name Shadow Cunoesse, while others take hope in the fact that Chaos has, barring the occasional Elvis-style sighting as an event, not re-emerged in the independent wrestling circuit. But the Gua has a habit of withdrawing suits once it's made its point. And as for the second piece of evidence, sorry fans, but all standard contracts of the Gua contain a non-compete provision that prevents a wrestler from taking any wrestling bookings for a full year after she's been released. Also, considering the way her name was smeared in the mainstream press in the aftermath of the RVDX revelation, it's entirely possible that the wrestling world has heard the last of Shadow Chaos. Yeah, no one's going to want to hire us. We're a druggie, or so they say. So 6 months, sounds like TV's going real bad. This guy's whining about Paul Prototype being on top for a decade and them always doing the same things. Paul Prototype, of course, a not very subtle combination of John Cena and Triple H. And we're in the bar now. Keller's Keg is one of those few franchise establishments that manages to maintain a small-town personal touch, even if it's a brand that you can see all across America. It's open 24 hours and has a relaxed atmosphere, with warm lighting and plenty of wood furniture. And, of course, the fact that it has over 100 beers on tap doesn't hurt its popularity any. It's a great place to have a good, long talk. Too bad you're not looking forward to having one. It's just barely past 11 in the morning as you enter the bar. Time to get drunk. No, it has become your custom. You keep your hood up as you make your way toward the bar, trying not to make eye contact with any of the patrons. And that's easy at this time of day, as there are so few. But you remain vigilant anyway. You hunch over as you slide into an empty seat, trying to make yourself appear smaller than you really are. "What do you have?" asks the bartender. Well, we're here to talk to someone, and it's only 11 in the morning, so let's not get drunk yet. Let's just drink something non-alcoholic, please. Have some self-respect. The bartender gives you a measured look, then mixes you an Arnold Palmer. You take the drink with a grateful nod. You look up at the television for the first time since you entered the bar and do a double take. What? You take a deep breath and shut your eyes. Of course you'd have to catch an interview with JJ Bloody Delgado today, of all days. Almost in spite of yourself, you open your eyes and turn back to the television screen. JJ is dressed in a shirt and slacks, not her wrestling gear. The volume is too low for you to make out what she's saying, but you see a graphic for the Grudge Pit pay-per-view at the bottom of the screen. So it's easy enough to guess what she's doing on the talk show. And from where you're sitting, JJ is performing well, speaking animatedly, holding the attention of the hosts, even flirting with one of them. You wonder how much of what she's saying right now is a lie. You take a look at your drink. Can we chuck it at the TV? Nah. We'll stick with the Arnold Palmer. I don't know who we're talking to, but let's not get drunk until after our conversation. You sip your drink and fight down the urge to get something stronger. It's not like a drink exists that would take away the bitterness that has plagued you for half a year, 6 months, and 6 days. On one hand, it's hard to believe that so much time has passed. It seems like only yesterday that you've achieved your dream of wrestling for the Global Wrestling Alliance. On the other hand, it seems ridiculous that it's only been half a year. You can't remember the last time you woke up in the morning without something dark and heavy gnawing at your guts. You probably need to get that tapeworm checked. The last time you can think of wrestling, something you loved and still love, without feeling the urge to vomit. It's hard to remember what it felt like to not be consumed with rage, most specifically at... I'm pretty sure we are blaming JJ specifically. It sounds like it. Even during the days when it felt like old times, you'd known that the two of you had unresolved issues. You'd be willing to bury the hatchet, to make and accept whatever apologies were necessary. But now you know that JJ hadn't been simply avoiding that conversation out of discomfort or because of her schedule. From day one, she'd been planning to bring you down. And the fact that she got Gianna to pull the trigger, a part of you had expected some attempt at payback. But this... JJ Delgado robbed you of your dream, and there she is on television, living it out for you and all the world to see. I mean, when that one lady on the reality show, when she tried to murder us with a knife, at least she did it in front of our face. JJ didn't even have that kind of respect for us. You realize that you're holding your drink in a white-knuckled grip and will yourself to relax. The funny thing is, at this rate, you're already doing better than you have in a long time. The first month or two after you were fired from the GWA is just a blur in your memory. The first thing you'd done was find a new place to live, somewhere no one would think to look for you. You got rid of your old phone, never used your credit cards. You were hiding, not from the law, but from your old life. You vaguely recall indulging in some vices, hanging out in some bad places. But what you remember doing most often is... Well, maybe we'll ask the chat about that. Chat, what do you think Cunoesse has been doing? How has she been handling her depression? Has she been watching movies, number 1, or number 2, watching recordings of her matches, or number 3, hitting the gym, number 4, posting in wrestling sites and forums, and 5, a little bit of this, a little bit of that? Number 3? Or maybe 4? Looks like 3 is in the lead so far, which is hitting the gym. Hitting the gym! Probably a healthier way to deal with things than posting on wrestling forums. You know, if you're a professional wrestler, you're trying to still be a professional wrestler, probably not a good idea to get down in the muck with the wrestling fans on the forums and get into flame wars and such. You probably don't want to do that. Probably a good idea to stay away. But 3 and 4 are fairly even. 3 is in the lead, and I think 3 is going to win. So it does look like we're going to say that we have been hitting the gym. As the weeks flew by and reality began to set in, it became harder to avoid making contact with your friends and family. Many were actively searching for you, and you felt like these people truly had your best interests at heart. Although you've been wrong before. Some of your old buddies from the Borderless Wrestling Federation actually came to your old place to look for you. You only found out because you realized you left some important documents behind in storage and had to make a trip back. You may be dead in Vinny's eyes, but that didn't keep some of the boys and girls from worrying about you and taking time off so that they could ill afford, just to try and find you. That's true. If you're an indie wrestler, you don't really have... You don't have the luxury to take time off, it's true. It would be great to work with Twister and the gang again, but you can't. Not yet. It was about the 3rd month of your self-imposed exile from your old life that you realized you were running out of cash. Oh no, that's right. That is why you were wrestling professionally. It was money. You don't have money. You're out of a job, and even if you weren't spending all that much, you could only get by for so long without steady income. It took an effort of will to start looking for a solution to the problem, but one thing was for sure. Let's see. Did we need to be involved in wrestling? Did we hunger for it? It hurt too much. Wrestling was all we knew how to do. We needed to think. No, obviously we hunger for wrestling. I hunger for wrestling. We have to do it. Our passion. You're a wrestler. It's what you always wanted to be. It's what you worked for years to become. Some days, it feels like it's part of your DNA. You knew that whatever your job was going to be, it had to be wrestling related. Luckily, it only took you a week to find a small wrestling federation in your area, Skull Bashers Nation, with regular shows but without much of an online fan base. That made it less likely to be on the radar of either the GWA or the internet wrestling community, which was good. Even if you weren't planning on wrestling, you didn't want to have Forrest Dundee or Bleacher Watcher 619 walk in on you on your new job. And also, Bleacher Watcher did mention something about a 1-year non-compete. So maybe if we wrestle for really small companies, maybe the GWA won't know that we're breaking our non-compete. Maybe. Sophia Crew, the promoter and booker of the Skull Bashers Nation, hadn't been what you expected at all. It wasn't so much that she was a woman. Cameron Dobbs, being the undisputed owner of the GWA for more than a decade, had broken that particular glass ceiling. But that she didn't act like someone in a position of authority. When you'd arrived at the office, she'd been in the process of reducing a 350-pound man to tears as she quizzed him relentlessly about the details of his love life. Her office was also decorated with photographs of her and various wrestlers, some on her roster, some from the GWA, with ridiculous dedications written on each. If anything, she seemed more like a fan than a promoter. She squealed at the sight of you walking through the door, and for the first 10 minutes, all you did was sign autographs and tell her what it was like to wrestle the likes of Dame Sagramore, the old Brit, and Super Horns. Now that she was finally seated behind her too large oak desk, her military boots beating a dull staccato as she drummed her feet on the table, Sophia gave you a puzzled look. Okay, I'll level with you. I'm not sure exactly what you want me to do here. No, that's us talking. I'm not exactly sure what you want me to do here. Actually, I'm not sure who is talking here. She picked up one of the pictures we'd signed. When you spoke to me on the phone, I honestly thought this was a fraud. I mean, we're just this rinky-dink down small-town hardcore promotion. But I seen you around, so I know you're the real deal. She smiled. I love your work, and as long as you don't use drugs now, I could care less about whatever you did before. But every promoter knows about the non-compete clause, and here with the GWA's what I don't need. Oh, a masked wrestler. That's always a fun one. Gonna wrestle under a mask? Shh, don't tell anyone. Like, they can't punish us for breaking our non-compete if they can't prove that it's us under the mask, right? That's how it works. That's right. Good wrestlers don't quit, they just wear masks. What the Gua don't know won't hurt them. Or more to the point, won't hurt me or your federation. You placed a paper bag on the table. Sophia reached in and took out the mask you had custom made. The design was simple. A black mask with a central X mark that seemed spray painted in white. It was a design you'd come in. I don't know if we'd be proud of coming up with this design. What, it's just a black mask with a white X? It's not much of a design. It's simple, okay, it's minimal. Sophia arched an eyebrow. You can't really think the answer is this simple. I can change my moveset, you said. Change my mannerisms in the ring. I won't do any talking, so you don't have to worry on that end. I can reinvent myself and be just as good. Better even. Then in a quieter voice. I have to be better. I don't know. Sophia tapped her chin. I mean, your name, sure, but if no one knows it's you, it's not going to make much difference to my bottom line, is it? And I'd have to pay you off the books, which is a whole different set of problems. I'm a better wrestler now than when I first began to make a name for myself, you replied. And if I became a star once, I promise you, I can do it again. It's just a question of whether or not I do it for Sabine. Heh. Sophia still didn't seem convinced. Tell you what, let me see a copy of that contract of yours, and if the pros outweigh the cons, we'll try you out for a show or two, okay? You nodded. It was something, at least. Now, we have to work. We have to wrestle. It's in our blood. And if we're going to have to break the law to do it, I guess that's what we're going to do. With Sophia's help, you set about creating your new persona. To keep things simple, you decided to call yourself simply Cross, and settled on a finisher that you could execute well but didn't stand out. A fast and simple kick to the jaw that you called the Cross Edge, Cross Cutter, Crossover really is the best one, isn't it? It can't be Cross Cutter because that sounds too similar to Diamond Cutter, which is a very specific move. Cross Edge would it make sense? I don't think a kick would be called that, because I don't see what a kick has to do with an edge is the thing. I feel that crossover is the most logical option here. As Cross, did we wrestle a stiff, hard-hitting style that was like of a pure striker? Did we wrestle a coldly calculating, highly technical style that aimed to cause pain? Or did we wrestle a reckless, high-flying style that was a real cloud? Well, okay, our old style was that we were flashy, but we did not have fundamentals. If we're changing our entire style, I think we have to be coldly calculating a highly technical style as we try to cripple people with our holds and locks and stretches. They'll never expect it's really Cunoesse under this mask if we're wrestling in this way, because we never wrestled like that before. It only makes sense. At first, the crowds were never large. Crew's promotion was a mixture of 2 parts wacky storylines and 3 parts hardcore death matches. A strange beast that was silly, yet not kid-friendly. You know Sophia's predilection for extreme matches, of course, but her love for storylines inspired by whatever Japanese comics she happened to be reading, particularly the fan comics with homosexual undertones, had been a surprise. Well, what we need to do is get her reading some Yu-Gi-Oh! So we can have some card game-based storylines. Like, have a match where, like, there are, like, the ring, okay, we have a ring, 2 rings that are elevated into the air by cranes, and each wrestler is standing in a ring, and they have to play a card game, and the other wrestlers are the monsters that they're summoning, and whoever loses, the ring they're in explodes. You see, this writes itself. It writes itself. I felt all these contributed to make Sabine so special. We didn't care about the storylines, but the more extreme the match, the better we liked it. We avoided the hardcore matches when we could, but the storylines were great fun. All these things make me wish I worked for a different promoter. No, we have to take a positive attitude towards this. A positive attitude. I want to know about these storylines. Tell me about the manga gay storylines. Eventually, the crowds began to grow, due in no small part to you. Whether you were wrestling in a squash match in the middle of the show, a mat-pounding classic with Mistress McGain, or a cactus and fluorescent bulb cage match with Bastion Bear, you wrestled each night like a woman possessed. You had something to prove, and it showed. Before long, clips from Skull Bashers Nation were going viral on wrestling message boards, which of course means that it's only a matter of time until we received a visit from a familiar face. She came yesterday. Man, those gay mangas. Don't waste any time. You just bounced off the ropes, getting ready to duck under a clothesline attempt from Bastion Bear, when, from the corner of your eye, you saw Topora Tua sitting by the fire exit. Your mind went blank, and before you knew it, you ran headfirst into the old Russian's massive extended forearm. Boris, veteran that he was, simply improvised. He picked you up from where you'd crumpled to the mat and brought you into one of his patented bear hugs, which gave him a chance to speak to you while also covering for the fact that you were too dazed to walk. What happened, girl? You see a woman worthy of the sexing? A ghost from... you shouted, selling the pain of the bear hug. The past! Please don't... speak in character. You dare mock my accent, Americanci? Boris applied some real pressure, and your breath whooshed out of your lungs. You could almost hear the smile in his voice as he went on in perfect English. Do over. Swing neck break. He released you from the hold, only to toss you across the ring. You bounced off the rope and this time managed to duck the clothesline and counter with a swinging neck breaker. The crowd popped, and you raised a finger in the air and took the opportunity to seek out Topora. The chair by the exit was empty. Surely you were imagining things. Except that, after the show was over, one of the production crew came over to hand you a note that a friend of yours had left for you. Keller's Keg. Tomorrow, noon. Don't make me hunt you down, Cunoesse. What? How did she see through our disguise? We're wearing a mask and changed our wrestling style and everything? How did she do it? And that brings you to oh yeah, that's right. The chapter started off with us in a bar, waiting to meet someone. That brings us to Keller's Keg this morning, nursing a drink while JJ preens for the cameras. Topora Tua sweeps the barroom once with her steady gaze, like she's expecting an ambush, before sniffing in mild distaste and stepping over the threshold. You're still surprised by how the Samoan, even in slacks and a turtleneck, can radiate an aura of uncontrolled violence. She slides onto the empty bar stool to your right and evaluates you with a long look. You've gained weight. Look, it's been a rough few months, Topora. There's an understatement. But you'd doubt Topora would be here if she didn't know the true state of affairs. Topora opened her mouth and shuts it again, a sour expression on her face. She takes a deep breath. I've spoken to Gianna. You feel your hands clench. Topora pretends not to notice. She can't face you, and she hasn't told me who put her up to this. Okay, so Gianna admitted that she did plant the pills. It's not difficult to guess, but Gianna told me enough that I understand she's done you a great wrong. You snort. That's one way of putting it, sure. Gianna was told that it was part of a storyline, something that would eventually get her onto Wednesday Night Wrestling, maybe even on the main roster. She said there was even a camera taping the whole thing, but when she asked about it, after she found out you'd been fired, no one knew what she was talking about. You listened to Topora, your face expressionless. Well, Gianna seems a little bit gullible, cause kind of doubt they would do an angle about drug use in the wrestler locker room. It's kind of a sensitive subject. It's kind of a thing they tend to stay away from. They don't really want to talk about that on TV. But okay, so Gianna thought they were going to do a storyline where it turns out that she was planting painkillers and illegal drugs in our bag. Let's see. Is it quite the story? Does that make it all right? Maybe, yeah. We need to hear this from Gianna, not like an intermediary. Hard to believe that she's sorry when this is all just second-hand information. I'm not asking you to forgive her, or even believe her. This isn't about Gianna. Zipporah laces her fingers together. I have enough pull with that office that I can get the Gua to hire you back. They won't throw JJ under the bus without proof, and Gianna won't rat her out. My niece left the country months ago. But the Gua will issue a statement to the effect that your drug test was in error. You'll be back on the roster, subject to a few conditions. Conditions? Zipporah nods. If you're open to returning, I'll take you to someone who will explain things further. You don't say anything at first, letting the enormity of what Zipporah is offering sink in. Your career, your reputation. You could have it all back. No, not quite. You can't erase what happened, but it would be something. It would keep your dream alive, assuming it's still your dream. Zipporah seems to sense your trepidation. Listen, Cunoesse, she says. I'm not going to pretend I like you. I'm not going to pretend that I didn't believe every bit of slander hurled at your name. What happened to you was wrong. And I'm not going to pretend that what happened to you wasn't wrong. And Gianna, I'm not going to pretend that I'm not doing this for her as well. And if you fail to achieve your dream, I'm not going to pretend that I want her carrying the burden of that guilt. If only for that, I'll get you a second chance. Well, at least she was honest. And in a way, her self-interest made the offer more believable. As it was still almost too good to be true. Zipporah swivels around in her stool, so she's facing away from the bar. So, what's it gonna be? I've got a cab waiting. Let's see. Well, we can hear the conditions, then decide, or I guess just agree outright, or just nod. Probably good to get more information before we make a decision on this. I noticed that it doesn't give us the option to just say no, so maybe that's not actually a path you can take. Maybe you do have to at least hear them out. Let's hear out the conditions. You've been burned once too often. You're gonna get all the facts this time. You're gonna come into this with your eyes wide open. You end up at the Hotel DiBiase, one of the nationwide chain of boutique hotels with ludicrously high prices. Some might even say million-dollar prices. Zipporah accompanies you as far as the lobby, but says that you need to head to room 316 alone. The person you're meeting will explain everything. Who is it? Zipporah shakes her head. Best you see for yourself. You've barely knocked on the door to room 316 when the deep yet feminine voice calls out, "Enter." What you see when you enter isn't a luxurious hotel room, but instead looks like the showroom of an electronics store. You see boatloads of equipment in the room, each piece out of the box pristine and neatly arranged, every wire neatly coiled, every surface sparkling. There are CPUs hooked up to at least 7 different monitors, plus one high-definition wall projector. Most of the screens seem to be running wrestling shows, some old Wednesday night wrestling clips, others showing independent shows with wrestlers you've met, but one shows an undubbed kung fu movie, and another, a soap opera. You can see a fridge, a Spartan-looking bed shoved into one corner, and a large desk near the middle of the room, but otherwise the suite is dominated by the hardware. The biggest surprise, however, is the woman seated behind the desk. When you enter the room, Alex Dobbs rises to her feet. But this isn't the Alex Dobbs you remember from television, or even the one you met before the finale of Near Fall Academy. As she takes your hand in a firm grip, you can't help but stare. Gone are the girlish dresses, the fluttering eyelashes, and the creepy plushie that have been indelibly associated with her in the minds of Gua viewers. In their place are a plain t-shirt and jeans, wire-frame glasses, and a penetrating stare. "Shadow," she says, and again you're startled by the deep contralto. Nothing at all like the breathy voice she affects on television. "I'm glad you could make it." Okay. Let's say it's good to meet the real her out of character. Alex's mouth quirks slightly in apparent amusement. "So quick to jump to conclusions. What's to say this is any more real than my television character?" There's nothing much you can say to that. You get a sense of fierce intelligence from this Alex Dobbs, something acutely missing from her on-screen character. Two things are clear. The daughter of Cameron Dobbs is very adept at deception and completely secure in her authority. I guess we probably need to be on our guard. Somehow we didn't realize that she was just playing a character, even though we're in professional wrestling. Somehow it took us by surprise. Maybe we need to be a bit more skeptical about things. Hard to trust someone who can create such a complete facade. Alex motions you to a straight-backed chair in front of her desk, then returns to her seat.
Let's cut to the chase. The fact that you're even here means that our offer interests you at some level. I'd like to narrow that down.
Alex pulls out a cigar from a drawer, and for a moment you're reminded of Vinnie Geider. But Alex's is slim, and she actually lights it.
What do you want, Shadow?
Well, I mean, it's pretty clear what we want.
Payback.
Alex's eyes sparkle.
I can understand that. However, you already know that we're not going to be firing JJ. There's simply no evidence against her, even if I take Gianna Atua's secondhand confession as gospel truth.
She holds up a slim finger.
But if you want a chance at JJ in the ring, whether in a fight or a match, in front of thousands of people, I can make that happen.
She pauses.
Eventually.
What do you mean, eventually, you ask? Alex blows smoke into the air and watches the dark cloud make its lazy way towards the ceiling.
Do you love professional wrestling, Miss Cunoesse?
So is she saying that we can... like, have a real fight with JJ? Because I don't really think the wrestling company would book that, but I mean, who knows? We love professional wrestling. That she even needs to ask that is an insult.
I do,
says Alex.
There are people who spend their lives trying to get away from the shadow of their parents, who want to do anything but go into the family business. I'm not one of them.
She indicates the monitors around the room with a wave of her hand.
Barth's called wrestling a spectacle of excess. I've lived with that spectacle all my life, and I know its potential and its power. I also know that pro wrestling, as we know it, is in danger of disappearing.
Alex rises to her feet.
My father made wrestling a national sport. My mother, to prove she was better, turned it into a worldwide phenomenon. To this day, only a few people know how they did that, because like the rest of the spectacle, even the business moves took place behind the curtain, in a place that blurred reality and fantasy.
She's pacing the room now, slowly, her boots making no noise on the carpeted floor.
But times change, and with the internet, social networking, too many can peek behind the curtain. No, more than that, the curtain itself has become translucent. So my mother made changes, introduced shoot fights, gave Solitary what he wanted.
Alex stops and turns to you.
What do you think of Solitary's reign as champion?
So, the way I remember it, Solitary has been the champ for, like, many years, and he always wins, and the way they describe him does not sound interesting. I think is the conclusion that that we were coming to back at the beginning of the story, which was some time ago. He's boring. Solitary's boring.
I agree, Alex says. And business is reflecting that as well. It's reached the point where he no longer faces believable challenges, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. It makes it difficult to write stories for anyone else then, when it seems like they're merely competing to see who's second best.
Alex stops pacing long enough to grab a universal remote from atop a neat pile of papers. She points at the largest monitor and shifts to a scene of Solitary's latest conquest at Ring of Valhalla 15.
Because of his wins and the ill-advised deal that my mother made, Solitary is now in a position to control the main event picture of our most prestigious show.
The younger Dobbs' attractive features twist in distaste.
I know the kind of fights he wants. Every year, our most intricately crafted matches, the culmination of our most dramatic stories, and play second fiddle to 3 minutes of kicking people in the head.
Alex takes a deep breath, leaving you a moment to speak if you wish. So I'm not entirely sure if Solitary is supposed to be a one-to-one comparison to a real wrestler. As far as having made deals so the entire show revolves around him, it sounds like Hulk Hogan in WCW, but the way they describe Solitary's character and wrestling style doesn't sound like him at all. So I'm not sure if there's someone specific that they're talking about here. Let's see. Let's just hear the entire offer. We want to get all of the information.
You've told me what you want, and I promise you that it's within my power to make it happen. But everything has a price, Shadow, and my price is this. For you to get what you want, you must become what I need.
Alex takes your seat at the desk once more.
You are in a unique position. Not only are you a good, if untested wrestler, one who is not yet involved with the Gua's politics of power, but you're what also... Oh, that music's quite loud, isn't it? Hold on. Okay. You're not yet involved with the Gua's politics of power, but you're in possession of a storytelling goldmine, a real-life controversy, with someone who is your equal in the ring.
The younger Dobbs stuffs out her guitar in a porcelain ashtray.
Here's my proposal. I will resign you to the Gua, but under a mask, with new identity. In 1 month, JJ Havoc leaves to film a movie. While she's away, you'll wrestle every week. Only on television, no house shows, and I will put you to the test. If at the end of that time, you meet my expectations, we'll clear your name, officially rehire you, and put you into an angle with JJ.
Alex holds your gaze.
You'll have what you want, and in return, you'll be the tool I use to make the Global Wrestling Alliance. Do we have a deal?
Well, when Hulk Hogan would go film a movie, and he would be gone for a bit, that was an opportunity to try to push someone into the spotlight. One example was at WrestleMania 6, when The Ultimate Warrior defeated Hulk Hogan to win the title. A big reason for that loss on Hogan's part was that he was going to film a movie, so he's going to be away for a bit. So, got to get a new star in there. Ultimate Warrior's hot, up and coming, so they decided they were going to go with him, because Hogan would be a while before he'd come back. So when the big star leaves to film a movie, that is the opportunity to possibly make our name for ourselves. I wonder if we're going to get a new masked character, or will we continue on as Cross? I mean, Cross sounds pretty boring, honestly. Maybe we need a new character. Let's see. Do we tell the truth that it's a goal we can get behind? Do we lie that it's a goal we can get behind? Do we say as long as we do your part? Or do we say it depends on what this new masked character... Okay, why don't we leave this vote to the chat? Why don't we do that? We'll bring up the vote. What about 1 for truth? That's a goal I can get behind. 2 for lie. That's a goal I can get behind. 3, as long as you do your part, I'll do mine. 4, it depends on what this new masked character is like. So, which one will we be going for? It sounds pretty good. It sounds like what Cunoesse would want from her wrestling career. But can we trust the machinations of Gua management? We've been burned before. It seems like 3 is winning. Saying that as long as you do your part, we'll do ours. Thirdly, we don't trust that the Gua will do their part. Yeah, it looks like that's going to win, so we're going to go with number 3. As long as you do your part, I'll do mine. Alex nods briskly, almost curtly.
I think that's the basis of any agreement. But until we both have had the opportunity to make good on those promises, we must trust each other.
Alex opens another drawer of her desk and takes out a folded piece of cloth. You take it from her outstretched hands and look down. It's your cross mask from Skull Basher's Nation.
Since you already assumed a different identity anyway, I figured that the simplest thing to do would be to have you continue on as Cross. It also gives your new identity a history of its own, so it doesn't even seem like you come out of nowhere. This crew and I have come to an arrangement. Of course, your style will need to be brought back in line with GWA standards. Your former trainers have volunteered to do just that in the month that you have left before your debut.
The younger Dobbs places a slim folder on the desk and pushes it towards you.
Here's your short-term contract.
You reach for it, but Alex doesn't immediately let go.
One thing, Shadow.
Once again, Alex's gaze holds yours.
Second chances in the GWA aren't as rare as some people make them out to be. Most of us know what it's like to hit rock bottom, and few will begrudge you a right to redeem yourself.
Her blue eyes glitter like the points of blades.
But no one gets a third chance.
Chapter 9. Oh, hold on. We've reached Chapter 9? Yeah, I think that we can probably keep going through Chapter 9. Chapter 8 was a bit shorter than the recent chapters, so let's keep going on into Chapter 9, Parts Unknown. We're at Wednesday Night Wrestling, episode 675 from the Bernalillo Coliseum in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Apparently, we're gotten our next chance in the GWA, the GWA. Nick Varnish says, "Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children big and small, the Dobbs family proudly presents Wednesday Night Wrestling. Cue pyro, boom, 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 kaboom, kaboom, boom, boom, kaboom, boom, 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 kaboom. I'm your narrator." Who does the commentator ever call himself that? Nick Varnish, and we've got a sizzler for you tonight, folks. You say that even during our atrocious holiday episodes, Nicholas. And with me, as always, is the irrepressible Madison Rio, the only voice on this announce table that you should be listening to. And we're opening the show tonight with an open gate battle royale for the right to battle to the holder of the GWA Women's Challenge Gauntlet next week. Whether that will still be Ada Rabble is something we'll find out later in the show. I'd bet on Ada. She's tired of being a jobber to the stars, and no one ever says that on TV, the phrase jobber to the stars, and she's ready to claim her due with her own two hands. And the Women's Challenge Gauntlet will certainly give Ada that opportunity. If a wrestler can hold on to the gauntlet after 4 weekly defenses, she will gain the right to challenge anyone on the roster to a non-title match at the next pay-per-view. And remember, folks, you can only hold the gauntlet once in your career. So if you don't hold on to it for a month, your chance is gone forever. Why should they need to remember that? He drone on about it every week. All part of the service, my dear, but it looks like it's time for action. Indeed, it is actually impossible to forget the rules of any aspect of a wrestling match or any sort of conditions, considering they will tell you week after week after week after week after week after week, because they will need to make sure you remember if they're doing like some sort of special gimmick. You have to remember. And they will make sure of it. The theme music of Edith Rumble begins to play, but is cut off abruptly when she is ambushed by the Recruiter. The Recruiter pins Rumble on the entrance ramp for a 3 count, then proceeds to the ring to a chorus of boos. And that's what makes an open gate battle royale so exciting, folks. 20 names were selected for this match, but anyone who wants to enter can do so by simply pinning a wrestler before she gets to the ring. I mean, if that's the case, you'd think that the people coming to the ring would be on their guard, like be looking everywhere, because you're obviously gonna get attacked. Looks like the Recruiter really wants to go for that 3rd win against Neohawk. Hawk won't be able to duck out of a match if the Recruiter uses the Gauntlet. The theme music of Neohawk plays. It looks like Neohawk isn't about to sit around and let that happen. Who knew we see these two in the ring so soon after Hawk's devastating loss? What other surprises could the night have in store for us? 32 minutes into the Battle Royale. We're back from commercial. You're joining us once again, live from Albuquerque, as 5 warriors continue to slug it out for the right to compete for the GWA's Women's Challenge Gauntlet next week. During the break, Harley and Quinn team up to throw the Recruiter over the top rope, and now they're trying to do the same to Rika Trevor. We didn't find out enough about the Recruiter. What is the Recruiter's gimmick? What does she do? Does she attempt to recruit people into the armed forces? Is that her thing? Like how you would have wrestlers who would have like other jobs like IRS and threaten to make the wrestling fans pay taxes. Is the idea here is that the recruiter would come down to the ring and demand that the fans fill out recruitment forms. I get, it's not the worst idea for a gimmick, I guess. Why the heck did they go to commercial when a wrestler was in peril? Heads should roll. Still in the ring are Neil Hawk, the Blue Whale, and Pat Plural, and now we're awaiting entrant number 19! The theme music of Sal Green begins to play, but instead of Sal coming out from the back, a masked figure emerges, dragging Sal's prone body behind us. Oh no, Sal's been murdered! The masked woman lays Sal down on the floor and pins her, then slowly makes her way to the ring. Ho! 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 Now that's a way to make an entrance. Folks, I have no idea who this young woman is, but it appears Sal Green is out of the running. But as far as the identity of the newcomer is concerned, your guess is as good as mine, folks. The masked woman slides into the ring and surveys the situation. She sees Harley Quinn and Rika Trevor in a precarious position. The masked woman quickly overbalances Quinn, who tumbles over the rope alongside Rika Trevor. Harley pivots to face the masked woman, who then sends her out of the ring. With a clothesline, with a drop kick, or by lifting her up and throwing her to the ground. We do like our meaty drop kicks. Sweet stars above! Oh, Nick Varnish with his well-known catchphrase. Rio whistles. I cannot whistle. That's my attempt. Okay, I stand corrected. That is how you make an entrance. I'm getting confirmation that yes. Harley's 2 feet to touch the floor before Quinn scooped her up. Don't forget, folks, that's what it takes to be eliminated. The masked woman has eliminated 3 top-tier competitors in the span of seconds. Well, she may regret attracting all that attention in a moment. Neo Hawk and Pat Plural, who had been double-teaming the super heavyweight Blue Whale, goodness, now stare across the ring at the masked woman. They move against her as one. The masked woman, let's see, uses a spinning clothesline to both opponents. That doesn't really make sense. Attacks Neo Hawk with a Hurricanrana. Well, if Neo Hawk is running towards her, a Hurricanrana could be a counter. A full Nelson on Neo Hawk. That's not really a good idea in a battle royal. Or we pick up Neo Hawk and use her as a weapon. That shit sounds fun, but it's not an option. Why don't we try the Hurricanrana and see how it works? The masked woman stays near the ropes, and when 2 wrestlers near, she jumps at the smaller of the 2, Neo Hawk, locks her legs around Hawk's head, then falls backward, flipping Hawk out of the air and over the top rope. That leaves Pat Plural, but before the masked woman can make a move, Pat Plural is lifted off her feet by a rejuvenated Blue Whale and tossed unceremoniously out of the ring. Then the Blue Whale advances menacingly on the masked woman. Uh-oh, it may be too much to expect our masked rookie's impressive performance to continue. Blue Whale's over 400 pounds of rabid environmentalist. Not just environmentalist. Rabid environmentalist. So many pounds of it. Who wants to save the whales by... Oh, this is a good gimmick. She wants to save the whales by becoming one. I want to know more about Blue Whale's gimmick. And while the mysterious masked woman has shown a lot of skill, the only thing she wins this is getting those 400 pounds over the top rope. The smartest thing to do would be to wait for our final entrant to arrive and hope that they can double team the whale. Sure, if old Blubber feels like giving her that time. The Blue Whale, moving uncannily fast for a woman of her size, grabs the masked woman in 2 meaty hands. The whale lifts her up into the air and marches toward the ropes with determination. The Blue Whale tries to heave the masked woman over the ropes, but then the masked woman... Let's see, we could grab hold of the top rope, keep 1 foot above the floor. We could hit the Blue Whale's head with elbow strikes, or lands on her hands, flips onto the barricade. Oh, that's quite an athletic move, but it is too athletic for cross. Why don't we say that we hit with elbow strikes? The masked woman rains elbow strikes down onto the whale's head until the big woman has to drop her. The masked woman retreats to the other side of the ring as the Blue Whale shakes off the attack. Alpha Omega theme song begins to play. The Arab-American wrestler runs down the ramp. Speaking of number 20, here comes the mistress of mathematics, the Oracle of Odds, and she looks all fired up. The masked woman, I don't know how we're going to face the mistress of mathematics. She has all the angles covered. She's done all the calculations. It's predetermined. Let's see. We could... Masked woman, do we want to double team Blue Whale with Alpha Omega, or do you want to pretend to work with... Okay, why don't we ask the chat what do they want to do here in this critical moment? Do they want to double team Blue Whale with Alpha Omega, or do we only want to pretend that we're working with Alpha Omega? But in actuality, we're waiting for the chance to eliminate both of them at the same time. So far it seems like... Well, yeah, I mean, there's no option 7 or option 3. It's only 1 or 2, really. They're pretty... 1 and 2 are pretty close. But it looks like number 2 is probably going to win, which seems like... It does seem like the smarter idea. It seems craftier. The idea that we're not actually going to trust Alpha Omega, but we're only going to pretend that we are. Okay. I guess we're going to go with number 2.
I would often go there.
This is like the monologue that's going through our head, I guess.
To the tiny church there.
Once Alpha Omega slides into the ring, the masked woman joins her in an all-out assault on Blue Whale. The big woman puts up a fight, but was one of the early entrants in the Battle Royal, and the 2 smaller wrestlers manage, if only barely, to get Blue Whale over the top rope. But just before Blue Whale goes completely over, the masked woman releases her grip on the big woman and instead grabs Alpha Omega by the ankles. She pulls them up and over, sending both Blue Whale and Alpha Omega over the top.
Toward the 7 sisters.
Alpha Omega is livid, but the crowd goes wild.
Toward those pale cliffs there.
The masked woman. Let's see. Do we punch the air in victory? Do we stand motionlessly in the ring? Or, I mean...
In a tiny...
Why don't we... I mean, we're here for someone. Let us look towards the entrance ramp.
I've been so glad here.
Varnish steps into the ring as the referee raised the masked woman's hand. Folks, what a match! Let me introduce you to the new number 1 contender for the Guaz Women's Challenge Gauntlet. Varnish leans close to the masked woman. If I could get a name from our new, exciting new... It's Dame Sagramori number 3, you numbskull. And theme starts playing over the arena sound system. One fans find instantly familiar, one which starts with the grating grind of a buzzsaw, followed by the clacking of teeth. Oh, hell yes! A man with an artificial metal jaw emerges onto the ramp to thunderous applause. He seems to be around 60 years old and dressed in a suit and wearing a black hat. It's Jaws, the best damn manager in the history of professional wrestling. Well, I guess Jaws from James Bond is here. I would imagine he would be more the wrestler than the manager, but I guess he was actually a manager. Jaws enters the ring and takes the microphone from Varnish, who returns to the announce table. I am marking the F out. Oh, and pro tip, if the commentator ever says that they are marking out or uses terminology like that, garbage commentator. Absolutely worthless. I thought you might be. Eat the weak. Eat the weak. Big into Tavor. Y'all know me. You should. Gonna keep this short. Because you guys know how I hate to jaw. Also, I guess this is how Jaws sounds like. He doesn't talk much in those movies. I'm just going to assume he sounds like this. The audience breaks into appreciative laughter and friendly catcalling. Told y'all I retired because there wasn't nothing left for me to do. But there's one thing I cannot say no to, and that's raw, destructive power. This here... Jaws slaps the masked woman on the back. This kid is the real deal. So guess what, breadsticks? I'm back to feast on the weak. And I'm bringing with me the future of wrestling, the next holder of the Guaz Women's Challenge Gauntlet, the woman called Cross. Jaws raised Cross's arms. Dinner time. I guess we're all into vor here. End transcript. Backstage. Bernardillo Coliseum. You feel exhilarated as you come through the curtain, the high from the crowd's reactions coursing through your veins like electricity. This is what it's all about. How could you have lived without this rush for half a year? Of course, not everyone is as welcoming as the crowd. Backstage, you find yourself the focus of open stares and discreet mutterings. Alex has made clear that no one is to know that Cross is you until you're ready for the big reveal. You aren't to go anywhere public without the mask on, and you're not to speak with anyone except through your manager. This helps maintain your aura of secrecy, but it also means that the other members of the roster are seeing a literal unknown being pushed before them. But you can bear that resentment with a smile, now that you remember what it's like to get a crowd of thousands onto its feet. The cheers that are still echoing in the arena make all your trials seem worthwhile. There were times during this past month, as your former Near-Fall Academy trainers put you through some truly hellish training, that you feared you were fooling yourself, that there was no way that you'd be ready in time for your re-debut. If you thought the AAA gang had been harsh critics when you were at the Academy, they were 10 times more critical now, but their stubborn insistence on perfection paid off. Once you settled on a specific style to train, a high-flying style with emphasis on acrobatics maneuvers, hard-hitting style with emphasis on strikes, submission style with an emphasis on wrestling holds, or big woman style with an emphasis on lifts and power moves. Well, we've never been a power wrestler, but how can I say no to big woman style? Clearly, it's the way to go. Okay, we mastered a style involving power moves. Under Mr. Awesome's tutelage, you mastered his array of lifts and power moves, a style of wrestling suitable to competitors with overwhelming strength. Mr. Awesome even taught you one of his most famous finishers, the Awesome Bomb, which you renamed the Power Cross. A scoop lift power bomb where you hold your opponent vertically across your chest, then push her up on top of your shoulders before slamming her back. You hold your opponent vertically across your chest. I'm just trying to imagine it. You push her on top of your shoulders. Like, that's just it sounds just like a really awkward way of describing a power bomb. I guess. Sounds like it, I guess. Still, in spite of your level of improvement, until tonight you hadn't been certain that you could make a comeback to wrestling on the big stage. After winning the Battle Royale in style, however, you feel confident in your abilities. It's a confidence shared by your boss.
Good to know that I'm already getting a return on my investment,
says Alex Dobbs as you and your manager enter her office. She's seated behind a large desk, watching the action unfold on a large, flat screen. She's dressed as her on-screen character, but her demeanor is that of the consummate executive, whom you met a month ago. The contrast takes some getting used to.
I knew it was a good idea to put you in a babyface role. That should be a hot crowd for the rest of the evening, and the roster has you to thank for that.
Yeah, usually we've been a heel, but we are a face now, under our mask. Yes, you say, taking off your mask and luxuriating in how the cool air feels on your face. I'm sure they'd be happy to display their gratitude by knifing me in some back alley. Jaws barks out a laugh. If someone hates you, girl, that just means you're doing some right. Alex favors the old man with a smile, even as she speaks to you.
Didn't I tell you I'd find someone to be your voice? Let me do the formal introductions then. Shadow Cunoesse, meet Vern, Jaws, Shikat. I guess that's the name. You and Jaws exchange a firm handshake, and you try not to act starstruck. It's not easy, just as it hasn't been easy for you not to jump for joy when you saw him coming out at the end of the Battle Royal, because on any list of top wrestling managers, you'd never find Jaws ranked lower than number 3.
Of course, that's almost about the only thing about Jaws and people even seem to agree on. The rest of his background is a mishmash of conflicting stories, half-truths, and speculation. No one even knows why he really had his jaw replaced. The story ranged from bone cancer to a birth defect to a beating from Brutal Bukowski. You don't want to get a beating from Brutal Bukowski. That'll do it. That'll do it any day of the week. Good job out there, girl, says Jaws. Let's make us some money, shall we? Yep, that's the plan. Nice to see Jaws has his priorities straight, in a sense.
Vern is right,
said Alex, looking at the old man.
I wouldn't worry too much about anyone causing you trouble outside the ring. The ones with the biggest egos are also the one who has worked the hardest to get to where they are. They won't throw away their careers and risk jail time because of another wrestler's push.
Alex turns back to you.
Inside the ring, of course, is another story, but I trust that you can take care of yourself if necessary.
You nod. The way Alex asked that seemed less of a question than a requirement.
We have a security team ready to escort you two off the back. Make sure you keep your mask on and until you're at the hotel. You won't do any house shows, so just keep your head down until we meet up in El Paso for W&W. As we discussed, you'll be going over Rabble and winning the gauntlet.
If I'm not supposed to meet Rabble before the day itself, you ask, does that mean we're going to call the match on the fly? Alex shakes her head.
Rabble is one of the girls who likes to work from a full script. I'll speak to a few agents and send you some ideas. We'll hammer it up by Sunday. Of course, in the script, it's Rabble. Oh, that's it's saying in the script it's Rabble who's going over. But we're going. Is it going to be a surprise that we're going over? That seems unprofessional. That makes you blink. What? Are you afraid of a leak or? No, we're just screwing Rabble.
You can't quite believe how matter-of-factly this dainty young woman in the sundress says those words. Alex rolls her eyes.
Listen, Rabble is a blabbermouth, someone whose strategy for getting the fans behind her is to go all insider information on Toutler while she badmouths people that she's sure the internet already hates. She doesn't even suspect that we know she is the one behind that slanderous Dobbs Diary podcast. If she knows about the finish to the match even an hour in advance, trust me, it'll be all over the internet a minute later.
Well, we can be not comfortable with it and say so. We can be not comfortable about it, but keep quiet. We see Alex's point and agree with her, or it doesn't really matter to us. Well, how do we feel about this? This is kind of a strange thing. I mean, this game's... We'll leave that to it. We'll give it a vote. 1, 2, 3, or 4. This game's interpretation of pro wrestling here and there is kind of odd, as it's been sort of a combination of worked wrestling, and then sometimes we have to actually beat our opponent, and we have to figure out moves to pin our opponents for real. Kind of an odd combination, but this time around, it's supposed to be a worked match, but the boss is saying, no, we're just going to screw your opponent. We're going to tell her the wrong finish, and then we're going to reverse it on her, so don't worry about that. How do we feel about this happening in our place of employment? Well, so far, it's kind of a fairly even distribution. Number 2 and 3 are tied at the moment. It does look like... Okay, we do have a tie. And you know what that means when we have a tie? We go with the choice that got the least votes. So that means we are going to be going with number 1. I'm not comfortable with this, and I say so.
So noted,
Alex says.
And your loyalty to your fellow wrestlers is admirable.
You shake your head. Obviously, Alex isn't going to budge on this one. Alex motioned towards the door.
You place Rabble in her own submission hold. Make sure to sway her back and forth a bit, and the ref will call it as a tap out. It'll be part of the script, just not the finish on paper. We'll have bruisers ready to haul Rabble to the back when all is said and done. Don't worry, Dundee will take responsibility.
As you and your manager turn to leave, Alex calls your name. Her eyes are focused back on the monitor, and her tone is almost conversational.
Remember, you need to prove to me that you'll be useful. And a tool that won't take direction is not useful. Keep your eyes on the prize, Shadow.
Okay, so this is being an explicit reference to the Montreal Screwjob, where Bret Hart defended the title, WWF title, against Shawn Michaels. Bret Hart was told that he was going to win, but during the match, Shawn Michaels put Bret Hart's own finisher on him. The ref called the match, awarding Shawn the title, and Bret was very confused because he was told he was going to win. That's a very well-known event in pro wrestling, because Bret was going to be on his way to WCW, and Vince McMahon just really wanted him to take the title off of him before he might have the chance to show up on WCW TV with the title in tow. So that's what we're doing here. Wednesday Night Wrestling, episode 676, Guerrero Garden Stadium in El Paso, Texas. The words of the younger Dobbs are still echoing in your head midway through your match with Ada Rabble, even as you sell her attacks in a corner of the ring. The screw job has been on your mind since your meeting with Alex. Jaws, of course, had been dismissive. He was a loyal Gua man, and in his day, when the boss said jump, you didn't even ask how high. You just jumped as high as you bloody could. But moral issues aside, the idea of a screw job finish on live television worried you. Yes, it had been done before, but each time it had been messy for all involved. Rabble wasn't as high in the Gua totem pole as others who had been screwed, but that doesn't mean she couldn't cause trouble. When you brought it up to Jaws, the old man had just smiled. In my day, if you wanted to be the top dog, you needed to prove to the boss that you could handle anyone who tried to shoot in the ring, whether it be an opponent or a drunk fan. He put his arm around you. Girl, you want to know the easiest way to prove to people that you're the toughest person in the building? Sure. Jaws' eyes glinted. Be the toughest person in the building. A stiff knee to the midsection snaps you out of your reverie.
Wake up, rookie,
says Rabble, before lifting you to the top turnbuckle. One thing that you've learned in this match is that for all of Rabble's passive-aggressive complaints about how the Gua doesn't make time for new talents like her, she's fine with the traditional stiff match to haze the new meat. It doesn't help that her faux combat fatigues are chafing you, both accidentally and intentionally. Mentioning hazing, there are some wrestlers who are, let's say, a fan of beating up the new guys, being overly rough with them to, break them in. Some wrestlers were known for doing that and maybe taking some liberties that maybe they shouldn't have. Rabble sets up the superplex.
Sell for me, rookie.
She heaves you up, then falls back to the mat. As you fall, you have time to decide how you're going to react to the hit. Rabble won't see it until later, since she'll be selling the pain from the move as well. We could sell properly, we could undersell, or we could oversell. Well, this is the match where the screw job is going to happen, so we probably should just play it straight until the very end. Let's not give any reason for there to be a suspicion that something is up. So let's just sell properly, I think. You hit the mat and arc your back in pain, holding that post for a moment before curling almost into a fetal position, trembling slightly. It doesn't matter if Rabble recognizes that you did your part. It's likely she won't care about anything but the finish. When all is said and done, what matters is that you're a professional, and when you're hit by a superplex, you act like someone almost broke your back. Slowly, timing yourself, you get back to your feet. You time it so you stand just a second after Rabble does. Rabble comes at you, and you duck under a clothesline, rebound from the ropes, and catch her in midair as she jumps at you, turning it into a body slam that shakes the mat. It's time for your comeback. Time to raise the audience's hope that you can beat the bad guy. Not too long ago, it wouldn't have been necessary in a match with Rabble. For a long time, Rabble's position had been that of an enhancement talent, someone only there to lose and make her opponent look good. Recently, her character went through a change when she began to snap after losing matches, beating the victors with an expandable baton. This got enough of a negative reaction from the crowd that the Gua had given her a push and let her hold the Women's Challenge Gauntlet. Until tonight. You drag Rabble to her feet, then lift her easily into a vertical position across your chest. You hold her there for 3 seconds to let the crowd marvel at your strength, then push her up on top of your shoulders for a split second before hitting your power cross, power bomb. You cross your arms over your head, the hand gesture that Alex came up with, and the crowd roars its approval. It's time to go to the finish. Rabble's submission maneuver of choice, the Rabble Rouser, involves trapping an opponent's ankle between her legs, trapping the opponent's ankle between her legs, locking the wrestler's head between her arms. Oh, it's an STF. It's just you can just call it an STF. It also places you in a position where you can communicate with your opponent without being seen by the audience or the television camera. As you place Rabble in the hold, you wonder if you should give her some form of advance notice as to what's to come. She hasn't exactly endeared herself to you in this match, but on the other hand, you of all people should know what it feels like to be screwed. Yeah. I mean, she hasn't endeared herself to us. She's been roughing us up, hazing us. I don't see why we should be doing her any favors. Let's keep her ignorant. You start to shake Rabble back and forth, the signal for the referee to see Rabble tapping out, and for the camera to be at just the right angle that the viewers at home can't see Rabble's hands. You've barely shaken Rabble 3 times when the referee signals for the bell. Rabble's reaction is immediate. She charges the referee and grabs her by the collar as you raise your arm in victory. She argues furiously with the official as Jaws hands you the Guaz Women's Challenge Gauntlet, an actual, honest-to-God, medieval armored glove, except forged in bronze instead of steel, and you hold it high as the crowd cheers. "Ladies and gentlemen," you hear Nick Varnish intone, "the winner and your new Guaz Women's Challenge Gauntlet holder, Cross. I guess is how the audience is going to chant. When you look at Rabble, you can see from the expression on her face as she realizes what's been done. She tosses the ref to the mat and marches towards you, one finger pointing at you accusingly. "You think you're going to screw me? Me? After I'm finally getting the push I deserve?" You look towards the back, expecting to see Alex's security personnel double-timing it down the ramp, but no one is there. Your attention is pulled back to the ring by Jaws' shouted warning, "Baton!" You turn just in time to see Rabble snapping her expandable baton forward. The weapon does she just have it on her? Like she doesn't have to go get it, it's just like in her tights or something? The weapon telescopes out to its full length. With an inarticulate battle cry, she charges you. Well, I mean, let's punch her with the gauntlet, clearly. Seems like the appropriate response. Acting almost an instinct, you block the baton with the gauntlet, then bring it down hard on Rabble's forehead. She drops like a puppet with cut strings, and the crowd's cheer grows even louder. Wrestling fans do love their symbolism, you think, as you smile beneath the mask. Of course, now the security goons start trotting out. Any doubts you may have had that this was a test evaporate when you hear Alex, not Dundee's, voice in your ear.
"Full mark, Shadow. Congratulations on your first Guaz title."
When you return to your hotel room that evening, you immediately collapse on the bed. It's past midnight, and you'd like nothing better than to sleep off your exhaustion. But at the same time, you're famished. Jaws drops your gym bag at the corner of the room and arches his back. "Dang old bones!" Kayfabe is a painful thing, isn't it? Kayfabe means keeping character. So we're not breaking our character even when we're not in the arena. We have to maintain this at all times. Another manager may have balked at the idea of acting like a servant, but Jaws is in character all the time. This is nothing," Jaws grunts. "I'm your manager. That means I'm not only your voice, but your trainer, your advocate, even your Batman." Wait, you mean like Bruce Wayne? Jaws rolls his eye. "Honestly, the youth of today. It's a military term, girl. personal servant to a commissioned officer. I'm flattered, you say, but I hardly think I outrank a Gwa Hall of Famer. Jaws waves the accolade away as he seats himself heavily in an armchair at the corner of the room. That's a cute title, but it's politics, not respect. Same with this thing, he says, hefting the Gwa's Women's Challenge gauntlet in two gnarled hands. Too many bloody minor titles nowadays, if you ask me. This thing isn't even a belt, for God's sake. It's a problem with modern wrestling. Back in the day, there were so many prestigious promotions that if you had the talent, you'd be sure to be the top guy somewhere. Even if it was in small town, north of nowhere. Now, the Gwa's the only game in town. And you can only have a handful of top guys. That's the least radical of the changes. To think I'd live to see the day when the top title of the business, the only championship that really matters, being held hostage by some... Well, let's ask him what he thinks about solitary. Sure, but I'm old school. The old man shrugs. I believe that shoots should be the exception, not the rule. In my time, there was always room for shooters. But at the end of the day, it was always the promoter who called the shots. For solitary just be able to choose when and who you'll fight, and for it to always be a shoot, girl, that just ain't wrestling. Not in my book. Jaws shakes his head. You got something more important than a Hall of Fame ring. We'll owe it to your belt, girl. You had the respect of a Dobbs. And the Dobbs who was more difficult to please at that. One of a handful that ever seen her take a personal interest in. I don't think it's much of an exaggeration to say that she's considering entrusting the future of wrestling to you. You wonder if that spiel is sincere, or an attempt by the local Gwa man to make you feel indebted to Alex Dobbs. Or maybe it is a press release, but sincere nonetheless. It's tough to tell with these old-timers. But flattery or not, the old man's words stay with you well into the night. Wednesday Night Wrestling, episode 679, Stone Hall, Las Cruces in New Mexico. You're getting a massage from one of the trainers when a production assistant pokes her head into the waiting area that you've been using as a private locker room. You curse at the interruption at this little bit of luxury. Tonight had been your third defense of the gauntlet, and those 3 matches had been the most physically taxing of your entire career. Tonight's match with Harley had been especially grueling, and you're dead tired. You've got a visitor waiting in the parking lot, ma'am. I told it was a Miss Hyde. You exchange a look with Jaws, who nods. Ms. Hyde is the code name you use for Alex Dobbs, and that means you report to her in the skybox. She's designated as her private office. No chance you could put this off, then. You sigh loudly. Hold on a moment. I'm wondering, when we're getting the massage, are we still wearing the mask? Because I would like that. I think that we should be wearing the mask. You and your manager have just emerged from the waiting area when an unexpected voice calls out to you. You're surprised to see Madison Rio walking towards you, microphone in hand. The color commentator must have been backstage doing an interview. She's wearing a tank top and gray cargo pants that are at least 2 sizes too large, cinched to her waist by a belt that seems to be made out of chain of a miniature Gwa championship belt. Ooh, stylish. You're a hard woman to find, says Rio. I don't know where Alex has you secreted between matches, but you blink. Suddenly nervous. Why does Rio know about Alex's involvement? Then you recall her being a part of the NAFA finale panel of judges, so maybe she knows Alex's true nature. But to use that name so freely where anyone could hear... Rio seems to be reading your mind, and she grins. Relax, they're all out there watching Prototype's glorious promo explaining his heel turn. That muscle-bound windbag will go on for so long that I won't be missed on commentary for the next 15 minutes. Now that I've got you in front of me, I'd be a fool not to get some exclusive info out of you for Spandex Savior. Rhea, Jaws growls and makes her name sound like a cuss. Buzz off! Well, let's have Jaws just deal with it. you're not good at dealing with Rio. There are times when having a manager comes in very handy. Mr. Shitcat, Rio mock gasps and presses her hands to her heart. How can you be so curt? I'm your biggest fangirl. Why the hell would I need fans, you stupid girl? I'm a manager. Jaws places himself between you and Rio. And don't even start at being a fan of the girl here. All you are is a shark, scenting blood in the water. That's funny coming from you, says Rio, her eyes narrowing and twinkling. Oh, the stories I could tell your new ward about your wild and woolly younger days. You're not getting an interview, says Jaws, no matter your slander. Who said anything about a full interview? Rio asks. Jaws, 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 it's not like I'm asking the masked woman to divulge her identity. In this day and age, I know damn well how valuable a genuine surprise is in this business. But a crumb here and there can heighten anticipation, and I've got just the platform to do it. I mean, Rio tilts her head at you. It's not like you're going to be wearing that mask for very long, right? You're glad that the mask hides your expression of shock. Alex wouldn't have told Madison Rio of all people what your plans are, right? Rio grins. Got that one on the nose, did I? She draws a circle around an eye with one finger. Mask doesn't hide pupil dilation, homegirl. Come on, give me something to hot work with and I'll do right by you. God knows you could use another ally backstage. You think that the girls are gonna get any nicer once the mask comes off? Mask or no, you'll still be getting a monster push from out of nowhere. Jaws shrugs and looks up at you. I say we walk, but it's your career. We need to keep our secrets. We're just gonna walk away from this. Aw, says Rio as you and your manager brush past her. Can't blame a gal for trying, right? As you make your way up to the skybox, you're surprised to see another wrestler on her way down. You've never seen anyone else report to Alex personally. Lady Skinner gives you an elegant smile as the two of you pass each other on the stairs. She looks happy about something. And given her reputation, that means bad news for someone else. You have a sinking feeling that you know who your next opponent is going to be. That feeling becomes a certainty soon after you and your manager take your seats in the skybox. Alex is on her feet, staring at a legible note she's written across a whiteboard.
Yes, she's your opponent for your final gauntlet defense next week.
Alex tears her eyes from the board to look at your manager. How's she doing? She's asking.
How's she doing? Health-wise?
The girls are giving you quite the welcome, says Jaws. I bet she's taking it well. Better than most of the new lot. This one can take a beating, Alex.
That's what I like to hear,
says Alex before turning to you.
Do you think that the girls have been unnecessarily rough with you, Shadow?
I think that Cunoesse would respond that we give as good as we get. Alex arches an eyebrow.
So I've seen. That's good. It's a productive way of using your emotions, and it gets you some respect as well. Especially if you can do that given the special circumstances of your next match.
What do you mean? You ask her.
Your final defense next week will be the show's main event, and it'll be a cage match.
You blink, your stomach suddenly doing somersaults, but Alex isn't finished.
But what we won't be announcing is that the match will be a quasi-shoot.
Quasi? We never heard the term before, and you tell her so.
And that's surprising, it officially doesn't exist,
Alex says.
One of the ways that we hide whether a match is a work or a shoot is by having a match start out as a work, then have it turn into a fight midway. In a quasi-shoot, we flip it back to a work for the fit.
That makes no sense. This makes no sense.
Of course, sometimes the wrestler is supposed to go over so damaged during the real fighting, and we have to change the script. But such are the risks with any match.
You exchange a long look with your manager. That means you're going to have to actually fight, one of the legitimately toughest women in the Gua.
Shadow.
You turn back to Alex.
This is your final test. You do this, and you can shed the mask. You can be your own woman and go after what you really want.
You rise to your feet as Alex comes close and offers her hand. You give a firm shake.
Don't disappoint me. Don't disappoint yourself.
Let's go with the second choice because that's consistent. with something we said earlier, that we will deliver what we said, and just remind Alex she has to deliver what she said. Also, the concept of it'll start as a worked match but turn into a shoot, that doesn't make any sense. Like, how do they determine when that happens? Does, like, the referee tell them, okay, now it's real, now fight for real? I guess this is what we're gonna do. SuplexObserver.net. Best and worst of Wednesday Night Wrestling 679 by Bleacher Watcher 619. So that ending is kind of getting a mixed reaction, isn't it? And I think that's fine. Sometimes something is a clear mix of good and bad. The bad, of course, is that Paul Prototype has once again maneuvered himself into a hot angle, but really, come on, you guys should have suspected that. Seriously, as soon as Prototype was beaten down by the mostly still anonymous lawgivers, the smart fan would know that a swerve is coming. So, the reveal that Prototype has been a lawgivers member all along, well, that was anticlimactic to say the least. What was, however, very interesting to me, and now we get to the good part of the show, the ending reveal is that Prototype is not the leader of this new faction. I can't remember the last faction that old Proto was in where he wasn't the de facto god. How cool would it be if the mysterious Kingmaker turned out to be none other than Solitary? Yeah, I know. Fat chance. From the details of Solitary's contract that have leaked to the public, and has been confirmed by reliable sources, we know that the Gua can't force Solitary to participate in any storyline, but that if he does involve himself in this one, he has to see it through until the conclusion. That provision is what's been keeping Solitary for most WNW episodes, except for promos during the Bridge to Valhalla. After he's worked so hard to achieve this level of autonomy, I find it hard to believe he'd give it up, but honestly, who else in the Gua would be able to put Prototype in a subordinate role? The other big news, of course, is that the Gua's Women's Challenge Gauntlet holder, Cross, continues her remarkable series of title defenses. The arrival of this masked upstart has completely changed the Gua mid-card. In her successive gauntlet defenses against the Recruiter, Blue Whale, and Harley, Cross has beat them cleanly and impressively. Each time, the decisive blow was Cross's Power Cross, which the Gua has successfully built into a devastating move. Consider that Blue Whale's defeat was the big woman's first loss due to something other than a disqualification, and I can't remember the last time that the Recruiter lost a first encounter. The woman's entire gimmick is centered on building to a high-stakes third-win recruitment match. Oh, that's her gimmick. You have 3 matches against her, and the third match is the recruitment match. If you lose the recruitment match, does that mean you have to go into the army? Was that how the gimmick works? Even with Harley, no stranger to being used to build up a new prospect, the win came after Quinn laid out Cross behind the ref's back. Again, when was the last time that someone kicked out after Quinn's punchline? Of course, Cross's success does raise a few questions, the first one being, just who is that masked woman? It's something that members of the roster are beginning to ask as well, given the secrecy that has enveloped her real identity. So far, the leading candidate is Mexico's Golden Saint, but Cross's style just doesn't seem to be the same, although there are a few similarities. The next question is, how serious are they about her push? It's been years since a gauntlet holder was able to hold the title long enough for her to issue a challenge, but they've never used the gauntlet to introduce a wrestler before. Without a ready-made storyline crutch to use, it could be that they're attempting to make a new star by immediately putting her into a program with an established member of the roster. Perhaps Super Horns, or one of the Plague of Angels, or perhaps JJ Havoc, who'll be making a return, albeit not an in-ring one, during next week's WNW. But win or lose, the identity of Cross's next and final challenger is the biggest indication we could have that Forrest Dundee and the Gua are solidly behind the masked marvel. The Dame of the Hunt herself, Lady Skinner. Unlike Cross's past opponents, Skinner is a bona fide main eventer, a 2-time former Gua Women's Champion. Rumor also has it that Skinner is something of a gatekeeper to the upper tier, a stiff competitor that Dundee often uses to determine if a new fish has what it takes. For the big leagues, for those who remember Skinner's bloody match with Azure Sky, Sky's last match before leaving professional wrestling for good. That's a rumor that's easy to believe. And for Cross to face her in a cage match, which will main event a televised show? Wow! Folks, it seems like a lot of our questions about Cross will be answered in this next match. I, for one, can't wait. Wednesday Night Wrestling, episode 680, the Velarda Gardens, Evansville, Indiana. A rhythmic beating of drum. Yeah, we can hear that. It's a rhythmic beating of drums. We hear it right now. Pounds from the speakers as Lady Skinner makes her way to the ring. She walks with the poise of a ramp model, but the tiger skin cloak and snake fang necklace she wears aren't just fashion accessories. They symbolize her very real ferocity in the ring. You watch on the flat screen monitor set up near the curtain as you finish warming up. You and Skinner met twice over the week to go over the broad outline of the match, and you found Skinner to be remarkably pleasant, even offering you a veteran's advice. But her smile never reached her eyes. Most of the match would be called inside the ring, and of course, at some point midway, Alex will turn into a fight. When you hear the word, shoot, in your earbud, that means it's time to fight for real until you hear the word, finish. As your opponent enters the ring, you turn your attention to the steel cage itself, 12 feet tall from top to bottom, surrounding the entire ring with chain links of tempered steel. The cage has been a staple of professional wrestling for years. It was one of the first of the gimmick matches, and still is one of the most popular. The only way to win is to escape the cage, either by climbing it or going through the side door. The first wrestler to get both feet on the floor wins the match. In one sense, the mechanics of victory allow smaller wrestlers to even the playing field, if they've got the smarts. On the other hand, the enclosed environment makes it easier for the larger wrestlers to corner their opponents and batter them against the steel. Then the monitor switches from an aerial view of the cage to a close-up of ringside. As is tradition during the final defense of the gauntlet holder, wrestlers who are likely to be challenged are present to witness the match. There at ringside are top-tier stars such as Superhorns, Angel Gabrielle, and the Gua Women's Champion, Terry Catastrophe, who has a great name. It's not until the camera pans to the announce table, where Varnish and Rio sit to call the action, that you see the woman that you want to see. JJ Havoc has returned from shooting her feature film debut, The Woman with the Golden Fist, and will be a guest commentator for the match. Ostensibly, this is because JJ is a former Women's Challenge Gauntlet holder, who defended the title successfully 3 times. In reality, this is a setup to have JJ nearby, without being too obvious that she's included in the pool of possible wrestlers for you to challenge. JJ looks like she's having the time of her life chatting it up with Varnish and Rio, showing off the tan she got in Hollywood. Yes, the tan that you can only get in Hollywood. No other place can you get such a tan. Well, we really do want to beat JJ, since we do blame her for everything. You feel a tap on your shoulder. Ready? Asks Jaws. It takes you a moment to realize that she's talking about the cage match, not JJ. You take a deep breath. One more hurdle to jump. One more wall to break through. And then... yeah, it's payback that we're looking for. This has been a long TM coming. JJ is going to answer for all that she's done. Ready, you say, then step through the curtain. You make your appearance to a barrage of cheers as you stand up above the entrance ramp and strike your patented pose, arms across above our head, palms forward. The chants seem louder today, the applause more meaningful. It's the first time we've really experienced that big fight feel. Cross. I mean, I don't know, it's like a one-syllable name. A chant doesn't work all that well. You wonder what it will feel like to have these same fans chanting your name, or at least your chosen name, once again. If you win this match, Alex has promised that you can make sure that everyone knows who you really are. Will fans of Cross stay fans of Shadow Chaos? Maybe you should just use Shadow Cunoesse. Well, I mean, how could we go with any name except our true one? I mean, that's obviously what this has been leading to. We have to dispose of our gimmicks and bare ourselves, our true self, to the world. As we get closer to the cage, thoughts of the future begin to seem a tad presumptuous. Before we enter the ring, we can sense Skinner's impatience, or maybe anticipation would be a better way to describe it. Outwardly, her body appears at rest as she crouches atop the turnbuckle, but the way she wets her lips, the way her eyes don't seem to blink as they watch our every move, she's here to fight. When you hear the cage door clang shut behind you, you almost jump out of your skin, so unnerved are you by Skinner's demeanor. Just how exactly has she been told to test you tonight? How far is she going to push you? As you and your opponent stand nose to nose in the center of the ring, you think about what strategy to employ. Going all out from the start would send a message, but since you're not going to be allowed to leave the cage until it's time for the finish, every inevitably thwarted escape will result in a painful bump. Maybe it would be best to conserve our energy for the unscripted fight. Of course, if the match portion lasts for 20 minutes and the fight for 5, you're not going to make a good impression on the audience if you hold back. Maybe we'll ask the chat, what do they think about this? Do we need to conserve our strength for later? Do we need to go all out from the start? Do we need to try to strike a balance? We will leave this gameplay, I guess it's a gameplay decision, to the chat about how do we want to go about doing this. If we conserve our strength for later, then the worked portion of the match will be underwhelming to the crowd, but we will have energy for the actual fight. If we go all out from the start, then we will impress the crowd with our wrestling, but we might be a bit winded for the fight. Then there's try to strike a balance, which is to try to have it both ways. But can we have it for both ways? Is that something we actually can do? Or is that just burning the candle from both ends? Which way is it? Well, it looks like number 2 is the least popular, which could mean it could win if number 3 and number 1 are tied, which they almost are. Number 1 is slightly in the lead. It's just slight. No, now they're tied. Now they are tied. And as the vote comes to an end, nope, number 1. Number 1 is slightly in the lead. So we're going to go with that. We're going to go with number 1, conserve our strength for later. You play things cautiously for the first 10 minutes. You're careful to provide enough action for the fans so they don't get bored. Well, at least a majority of them don't get bored. The key isn't in avoiding taking any bumps. It's not an option for a babyface up against a predatory heel, but in minimizing any use of the cage. So you draw Skinner into a straight-up wrestling match, and by not attempting any escapes from the cage early on, you take the painful links of steel out of the equation. Well, you minimize them. Occasionally, Skinner will kick you or throw you with the ropes with enough force that you hit the cage anyway. It hurts, make no mistake, but you know that you'd be in much worse shape if you were actually trying to climb the cage. It's a smart strategy, but you wonder if others, especially Alex, see it your way. Your answer comes after a sequence that ends with Skinner holding you in a front face lock. Skinner's called for a DDT, where she locks your head under her arm, then falls back, driving your head into the mat. And you're preparing to take it when you hear Alex's voice in your ear say, shoot. That seems like a bad time for that call. Seems like a bad time. Your eyes grow wide. You expected that call to be made when you and Skinner were on equal footing, not when Skinner literally has her arms around your throat. Before you can fight free, Skinner shifts her grip, scissors her legs around your waist, and falls backwards to the mat, pulling you down with her. She's going for the guillotine choke, you realize. You can feel the airflow to your lungs starting to cut off, and you rack your mind desperately for strategy. Well, we can use superior technique, we can power our way out, or strike at Skinner's arms. Well, earlier, we did say that we trained in the way of big woman, so maybe our big woman training can get us out of this as we power our way out. Skinner obviously has some technical skills, but just as obviously, she doesn't really know how strong you are. Otherwise, she wouldn't have gotten this close. You lock your hands around Skinner's waist, cut loose with a wordless battle cry. Ah! That's our battle cry. Then straighten your back, carrying the other woman up from the mat as if she weighed 10 pounds. The crowd goes nuts as you slowly get to your feet, and Skinner releases the choke and tries to escape your grasp. Too late. You bring her crashing down against your knee in a vicious backbreaker, then pick her up again and slam her back first against the steel cage. She slumps to the floor, and you're about to grab her again when you hear Alex's panicked voice.
Enough! Go for the finish! Go for the finish!
Huh. So much for the shoot portion of the evening. You slam a fist into an open palm. That's what that sounds like. That was a better one. Time to end this. Wednesday Night Wrestling, episode 680. The Velarde Gardens, Evansville, Indiana, show transcript. And we're back. Thank you for joining us again, ladies and gentlemen. Don't worry, you didn't miss much. Indeed. After a breathtaking burst of violence, a simultaneous crossbody has knocked both the challenger and the gauntlet holder to the mat. They're only now beginning to rise to their feet. JJ Havoc is on the mic. Both of them have taken a lot of damage throughout the match. Yeah, after all that, even a cross-body block can be hard to take. Now for insight from former gauntlet holder JJ Havoc, who's joined us for the evening's main event. JJ, you've managed to hold the gauntlet for 3 weeks before losing it in your final defense. Thanks for the reminder, Nick. Reminders are like the only thing he does. Could you give us your impressions so far of this defense? Do you think that Cross can pull it off? It's hard to say. Going into this, even if she was the gauntlet holder, I'd have to say that she was the underdog against Lady Skinner. But while no one has pushed her like Skinner has, she's more than held her own. I think we're looking at the birth of a new star today. Huh. Madison? It's just interesting that... Hold up, here we go! Cross is up first, but Skinner ducks under a clothesline attempt, then nails Cross with a sharp drop kick. Cross lands on her back, and Skinner grabs and lifts both of her legs. Skinner's going for it! Skinner tries to turn Cross over onto her stomach to set up for her submission finisher. Cross tries to counter by twisting her body in the other direction. The fangs! Skinner jumps and straightens her legs parallel to the ground, driving Cross's head into the mat. And she hits it! Okay, hold on. Let me read this description again. Let's see. Cross is on her back on the mat. Skinner grabs and lifts both legs. Skinner tries to turn Cross over onto her stomach, which sounds like a Boston crab. Cross tries to twist her body in the other direction, but then Skinner jumps and straightens her legs parallel to the ground. I don't understand what this... I can't visualize this move. Does she like jump up and come down ass first on Cross's head? Is that what I'm reading? I don't know if that's what that is, but that's the description I'm reading here. And she hits it. If this were a normal match, that's a pin for sure. Doesn't matter. Cross is out. Skinner raises her arms in triumph, then begins to climb the rope. Maybe? Cross lurches to her feet. The crowd cheers. Skinner begins to climb, oblivious to her opponent rising. And maybe you've misjudged her resilience. Cross is on her feet. Skinner reaches the top, but instead of climbing up after the wild woman, Cross merely watches and waits. Then, when Skinner is about to move higher on the cage and has only one hand and 1 foot on the chain, Cross rushes the cage and rams it with her shoulder. Stars above! Skinner is going to... After a moment of grabbing wildly for the cage, Skinner loses her grip and falls, twisting in midair, right into the waiting arms of Cross. That position! It's... Cross walks to the middle of the ring, holding Skinner vertically across her chest. Then with a roar... Rawr! She sits Skinner on her shoulders, then slams the other woman to the mat in a ring-shaking power cross. Holy! Power cross! A power cross to the falling Skinner! She's actually gonna do it! Cross limps to the door, then exits the ring. Oh, don't go through the door. It's always the lame way to do it. Even, you always, if you're the face, you always want to climb over the cage, because going out through the door is always kind of anticlimactic. Nick Varnish rises to his feet and addresses the crowd. Ladies and gentlemen, your winner, retaining the Guaz Women's Challenge Gauntlet for the 4th consecutive week, Cross. Cross raises her arm in triumph. Jaws hands her the gauntlet. What a match, JJ? Yes. What's wrong, movie star? Surprised that anyone could do what you couldn't? No, that's not... I mean, yes. Aren't we eloquent tonight? Cross holds the gauntlet with one hand and climbs to the top of the cage. She looks remarkably refreshed, considering the war she just went through. Once at the highest point, she swings one leg over and straddles the top. She raises the gauntlet high, and the arena shakes with the volume of the cheers. Cross! Cross! Cross? So just like one syllable. It's just not, it doesn't make for a very good cheer. Jaws comes over to the announce table and confers with Varnish. Varnish looks up at Cross. From somewhere up in the rafters above the ring, a microphone is lowered until it's close enough for Cross to grasp. As a consequence for retaining the Gua Women's Challenge Gauntlet for 1 month, Cross now has the right to challenge any wrestler for a non-title match. I've just been informed that Cross is ready to name her opponent. I cannot wait. Something's off. Cross looks down at the row of wrestlers looking up at her. Her gaze locks on Super Horns, and she raises the gauntlet high, only to toss it down onto the announce table. It lands on the table with a startling crack. What the? Varnish and Rio jump back. Havoc looks down at the gauntlet, then up at Cross. Havoc slowly rises to her feet. End transcript. You see shock and denial warring on JJ's face. Half a year you've dreamed of this moment. Half a year, but it seems like an eternity. You take the microphone in your left hand, using the right with slow, deliberate motions, knowing that every camera in the arena is focused on you. You remove your mask. There's an audible gasp in the arena. JJ's face had turned completely white, which it already was, but maybe even whiter than before. You bring the microphone to your lips. Well, it could be surprise. It could be payback time, you bitch. It could be, it was me, JJ. It was me all along. So, I mean, I guess that has to be it. That, of course, was Vince McMahon's line from one of the stupidest reveals in a wrestling storyline, when it turned out that he was the person who had ordered the Undertaker to terrorize him and his family, because they didn't have anyone else for that to turn out to be. So it just turned out that it was Vince, who was both stalker and victim in the same storyline. It's kind of odd. Anyway, we're gonna go with that. It was me, JJ. It was me all along. Okay, we got an achievement for using that line. And that means we go into Chapter 10, Pipe Bombs. So that's the completion of Chapter 9, and also Chapter 8, which we did before that. And I think that's going to be enough for Slammed for right now. Quite a lot happened at the beginning of this reading. Cunoesse was at her lowest point. She had been framed for drug use. She had been fired. She had a no compete agreement, so she was not able to wrestle anywhere else. Now she's back in the Gua. She's back as a contender, higher up on the card than she ever was before, and she is now going to get to wrestle JJ. Things have really turned around for her. They really haven't explained why Alex Dobbs is so high on Cunoesse. Does Alex have her own agenda, her own ulterior motives? Why is she pushing Cunoesse so much? What does she think she's going to gain from her? That is still a question mark. But clearly, Alex Dobbs is giving Cunoesse what she wants in terms of giving her JJ, but in exchange for what? Maybe we'll find out as we continue on with Slammed. I guess the shoot part of the match is pretty short. The rest of it was just all work. It's quite short, and because of our powerful big woman training, we were able to get through the shoot part of the match without any problems. So it was very good that we trained in the art of big woman. So we had a steel cage match this time around, which the concept of the steel cage match has changed quite a bit over the years. When it first came around, the whole idea was that these two people in this match hate each other so much, and there is usually so much outside interference when these two fight, that the only way to settle this is to erect a steel cage around the ring so they can't get out, no one can get in, and this match is going to keep going until someone wins. And then somehow over the years that changed, so the objective of the match was someone has to escape the cage. And it wasn't what that was originally. I'm not actually sure how and why that change happened. But the style of steel cage match that we had here was in the escape the cage style, in which we did so by leaving by going out the door. So that is where we are as we end Chapter 9 and begin Chapter 10 of Slammed. Cunoesse is almost on top. She's on a roll. Got a lot of momentum. Will she get everything she wanted, or will it turn out that maybe there is yet another swerve in her future? I mean, it's pro wrestling. There's always a swerve in the future. I guess we'll find out as we continue on with Slammed.